Torah Life Ministries come out of the world. Messiah people seek the truth.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we have Q&A. We have a bunch of questions this week that people have given me on my website. If you have any questions, just post them below the videos and I'll get to all of them, and I'm excited to get to them now. The first question is from Lisa, and Lisa asks, why do people promote 100% raw diet as being best when clearly Yahweh did not prescribe this type of diet? They even cooked his manna. And as Brad Scott says, he is smarter than we are. Well, most of the people that prescribe 100% raw food diet as being best for us are not believers of the scriptures. However, there are some me included. I think 100% raw food diet might not be best for everyone in a particular situation, but is it the healthiest food for us? Absolutely. Raw, ripe, fresh, organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds are the best foods for our body. And the Bible does prescribe in Genesis 1:29 as the ideal diet of our Creator, fruits and vegetables as our food. Now, if it was cooked, possibly maybe it was cooked at some point, but they certainly didn't have microwave ovens back then and the cooking methods they have today. But 100% raw food diet is ideal, and in the Garden of Eden, I'd have to believe that Adam and Eve just simply took the fruits and vegetables right off the trees or right out of the ground and they ate it. I highly doubt they cooked it, and it was a pristine state where they were in, and the food was amazing back then. The food today can be amazing if you grow it yourself and so on. Now, in the Bible, they absolutely say it's okay to eat cooked food. There's nowhere in the Bible that says you can't eat cooked food or you're sinning if you eat cooked food. And they even say you could eat meat. But we have to look at the question of what is the ideal. And the ideal is raw, ripe, fresh, organic fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. You don't need to do it 100% if you don't want to. But I think the more fruits and vegetables you have in your diet, the better off you're going to be. The next question is from another viewer, and they ask, is taking Chinese medicinal ant extract forbidden by Torah, or is it only eating the insect itself? Well, this is a weird question because there are a lot of people out there now, and not a lot, there are some weirdos. Can I call people weirdos on this show? Well, I think if somebody's eating insects, they're a weirdo, because a weirdo is just somebody that's doing something different than the world, so I guess I'm a weirdo as well. But there are many people out there, there are some people out there today that recommend eating insects. And the scriptures do not forbid eating certain insects. The scriptures talk about certain insects being okay to eat. In certain parts of the world, the average person will eat them. However, I don't know what the scriptures say about ants. I don't think it's biblically clean, but I'm just taking a wild guess here. I'm not sure if what the scriptures say about eating ants, the insect of ants. However, if it is forbidden to eat ants, then eating an extract from it would still be part of the ant. Ant powder is ants grounded up pretty much. When ants, you're not going to get like ant intestines or something like that, or an ant leg, like frog legs, which would be unclean anyway. But so it's a unusual question I got here. So don't turn off the TV here or the computer if you think this guy's crazy talk about eating insects. I don't eat insects, and I don't necessarily think we need to eat insects. But the Bible does talk about insects and the ones that are clean and unclean. The next question is from Dottie, and Dottie says, we met you and your wife last November at a lecture you gave here in Buffalo. When we met you in front of the restaurant that you spoke at, you shook my husband's hand, but not mine. Would you be so kind to explain this to us? Certainly, Dottie. Thank you for the question. And that was in November, and you're asking this now, so this might have been on your mind for the last couple of months. Well, I just have taken a vow that I am not going to touch any other woman but my wife, my baby, and my mother. Now, if somebody is sick, they need to go to the hospital, I'll pick them up and put them in an ambulance. But I am not going to go around hugging and shaking other women's hands. Nothing against you, Dottie, or any other woman out there. I just want to reserve my touches for my wife. And, I just feel best that. My wife appreciates that. And I have many, many different reasons behind it. Now, is it biblical for a man to touch a man, not touch a woman? It depends how a man's touching a woman. I don't say it's not biblical for a man to touch a woman, but I think ideally, for me at least, I feel best if I just reserve my touches for my wife. I find, it uncomfortable when I'm in a church or a congregation where everyone's holding hands, especially when they're praying at such a personal time like that. When I'm praying, I want my hands in the air. And, hugging and shaking hands and holding hands and all this. The only hand I want to hold and the only woman I want to hug is my wife, and my baby and my mother will get some of me also. But that's why I do it, and I'm not telling people they can't do it. I'm not telling people that it's a biblical reason. Now, people in the past have asked me, is it in the Bible? And in the Bible, they do talk about men and women, men not touching women, even their wife, during the woman's cycle. And that's not the reason I do it. But if people ask me about why I do it, I tell them the things I told you. But if they say, show me the Bible where that was done, that would be one of the examples. But in the scriptures, when it says greet each other with a holy kiss, it was men with the men and women with the women. There were no men and women during the biblical times coming up each other, hugging and kissing the way they do now today. And I think we live in a very immodest time, and I think the standards of the church have come down to the standards of the world and morals, and everyone's immodest. Now, it's not immodest to shake somebody's hand or even to touch somebody, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. And again, my wife appreciates it, and I certainly feel great doing that. So that was the reason why, but nothing against you. But that's my reason of doing that. Now, the next question is from someone that calls himself Potato Head. That's their username. And they said, I was recently told that my NIV Bible is not worth reading. It has been altered many times, and it's somewhat far from the truth. I was told to pick up a 1611 King James Bible. Can I get your opinion about this? Well, the NIV and the King James Bible, I have certain issues with both of them, but I have issues with every Bible. Basically, the main issue I have with every Bible out there is to understand your Bible correctly, you have to rip a page out. That's the page that's in the middle that separates the Old Covenant from the New Covenant, folks. It's not two books, it's one book. And that's the first thing. But, I read many different translations of the Scriptures, and the Scriptures that I say, if your Scriptures proclaim Yeshua as Messiah, just like he says he is, then that's good enough for me. But there are a lot of other Scriptures that are very, they have certain quotes and Scriptures that can be taken out of context and it can confuse people. I won't. My two favorite Scriptures or translation is, one of them is by Bill Morford, and it's called the Power New Testament, and he just completed the New Man Bible, or the One Man Bible, which is a complete Scriptures, and I talk about that. I interviewed him on my podcast. You can see it on my website, my Torah Life podcast. And there are some good Scriptures that are from the Aramaic. They're good ones. But I use every Scriptures out there. I mean, I'll use every different translation. But I look at different translations. I compare translations to see which ones I like sound the best. And so, the David Stern's Bible is great. The Jewish Bible, that one's wonderful as well. So there's many different ones out there, folks. But I wouldn't pick the NIV over the King James or the King James over the NIV. I see them both having their good points and both having their bad points. And the good points in the NIV is it might make things more easy to read, because it's more in the language that we read today. The bad points are some of the verses might be out of context, and some of the information might be switched around a little. As for the King James is, I can't even say more accurate. It's difficult to read. There are a lot of people, and if you're one of those King James people, don't jump on me for saying this, but there are issues with it, and the major issue is they're written by King James, who, from what I understand, he wanted to get people to write one Scriptures that everyone could read and so on, but so his idea was good, but his power, he wanted to pretty much honor himself. And I did a great video about Bibles. This would be my favorite answer. I did a great video about Bibles and what people had to do to get particular Bibles, and it had the first edition King James Bible on there and so on. You can look in previous in my videos, and it was like a 5-part video series, so check that out. You'll see it on my website, so that'll answer your question more. The next question is from Karen, and Karen says, it seems to me that Yahweh made himself very clear when he gave the Torah, so how could anyone say they sin by accident? This puzzles me. Then they go on to say, of course, today because of being taught we are not under the law, many of us are sinning unknowingly. Thankfully, the law is not difficult to keep, and it is a blessing. Well, sinning and not knowing it, would that be sin by accident? I don't think so, but we're not perfect in our human flesh, Karen, and I think if we're in union with Messiah and we're keeping the Torah, we could certainly live according to the moral laws of the Bible and live in a way where we're not sinning. However, there comes times in people's lives where certain situations happen and their God comes down, and they might do something, even by accident. An accident is, I didn't do this on purpose. I didn't purposely go out and do this. I didn't want to do this, but it happened. So there are some things that happen on purpose, and there are some things that happen by accident. There are sometimes we realize these things, and there are sometimes we don't. So can a person actually sin by accident? Sinning without knowing, yes, I agree with you. It happens every day because people are misled and my people destroyed for lack of knowledge. Sinning by accident. That's why they call it an accident. We didn't mean to do it, but it happened. So, and we repent for those times, and we're forgiven for those times. The blood of Messiah is not an excuse to keep living in sin. I think it's important that we realize it. Now, if we keep sinning over and over again the same sin, it might be more of a discipline issue than by an accident. But if somebody's walking, a sinless life according to the guidelines and instructions in the Torah, and then one day they mess up, they make a mistake, or an accident happens, or something happens, yeah, I think that's possible. But you know what? I'm just answering these questions. What do you guys think? Post your questions below the videos and let us know what you think about that one. That's an interesting question. The next question is it okay for a Christian to do yoga? Very interesting question. I think, personally, it's not, because Christian yoga is an oxymoron, folks. Yoga is another religion. Now, is it okay for a Christian to exercise and stretch and breathe, deep breathe? Excellent. As a matter of fact, I recommend it. But to walk into a yoga studio and doing these certain yogic prayers, and some people say, well, what if it's not the prayers? What if it's in a church and we're doing prayers out of the Bible? Well, again, the system of yoga, each pose is paying honor to a certain God. And, the way they do it and the system, the way it's lined up, there's a great video on the internet on YouTube called Yoga Uncoiled. You want to check that out. So I think stretching is wonderful. I think many of the poses that are done within yoga are okay for health exercises because they're basic stretches. However, the system of yoga and the way, let me put it this way, folks, yoga is not only stretching. Yoga is a religion. If you're stretching, call whatever you want, it's stretching. But if you're exercising, call it what you want, you're exercising. But when you're doing yoga, traditional yoga now, folks, there's a lot of yoga out now, there's different types of yoga that's not necessarily traditional yoga. When you're doing traditional yoga, it's part of a religious system. And that would make it opposite of Christianity. And the other question is it okay to get a colonic by a non-Christian? Well, a colonic, if you're not familiar with a colonic, is like an enema. It helps clean out the body. It's great for detoxing. I think it's okay to get a colonic by a non-Christian. I think it's better to get a colonic by a Christian. What's more important is, I think, if you're a man, you want to get a colonic by a man, and if you're a woman, you should get a colonic by a woman. I think that's more important. But absolutely, you don't want to go to somebody who's a non-believer and who's saying different prayers, over you in different languages and different gods, and has many idols in their office. But if you find somebody who's not a Christian and they want to do a colonic to you, that's fine. Now, there are other methods of alternative medicine, as they're called today, that I wouldn't recommend by a non-Christian. But again, a colonic, I don't see an issue with that. Okay, everybody. Well, I have several more questions here And what I'm going to do is next week, since I'm back back in Florida, next week what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these questions each day, and I'm going to take the whole day for one question next week. So if you have any questions, just post them below the videos and I'll get to them. But next week on Monday we have a question, and on Tuesday we're going to do the Torah portion, and then on Wednesday we got a great question, a really good question, and then Thursday and Friday we got some questions. So everybody, until then, this is Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries saying thanks for tuning in. Post your question in the comments below the video, and check out my my health website, which is rawlifehealthshow.com, if you want to see a lot of other great videos about health. Alright, this is Paul Neeson saying have a great Shabbat, and we'll see you again soon. Shalom, shalom.
Seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's way.